Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm your host, Marla Goldberg. This podcast has been created with you in mind to acquaint you with some of the most incredible metaphysicians and spiritual leaders from around the globe who have helped others change their lives. In this interactive hour, you will be offered insights and techniques to help you make a difference in your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. And here we go, on to the show. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I'm Marla Goldberg, your host for Guided Spirit Conversations, and I am so happy to be here with you. It is November. It is a month of gratitude, so please remember to be a little grateful for what you've got in your life. It'll take you a long, long way. Okay, on with the show. I'm here to introduce you to Rachael Cohen. Rachael is a spiritualist life coach, nature connector, plant stylist, energy worker, and intuitive medium. She is the creator-owner of Infinite Succulent, a San Diego-based wellness and botanical styling company, and the author of Everyday Plant Magic and Infinite Succulent. Rachael's previous work as an environmental educator and wild animal specialist left her anxious and depressed about society's destruction of nature. Then, a creative relationship with plants transformed her life. Now, Rachael is dedicated to reconnecting people with their souls through nature's infinite love, along with creative, intuitive, respectful, and magical, I love magical, interactions with the natural world. Welcome, Rachael. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you, Marla. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
We have been having such a fun conversation before the show started, and I know it's going to continue on. And if there's anybody who's a plant lover or curious about plants and their magic and how they do it, please stick around. And Bridget's my assistant. Rachael's information will be on the blog. So if you have any plant questions, you could also reach out to Rachael directly. So let's talk about this. You and I know each other from a past life. I'm going to put it that way. And you were telling me about your plants and your books. And first of all, I have to ask this question. So last year, you put together these beautiful holiday gifts with crystals and plants. Are you doing that again this year?
I actually always have those available on my website. I plant rooted succulents into crystals that are aligned with the chakras, and I ship them all over the country. And they make beautiful gifts. They're just gorgeous living art, and they're really energetically aligned to bring in a sense of groundedness, a sense of hope, inspiration, connection. Truly, whatever it is you're really calling in, we can infuse that into the stone and into the plant.
Thank you. I mean, I know this isn't something you put in here, but I remember you showing it to me last year, and they were so beautiful that we didn't talk about that. We didn't touch on if you're going to be doing that this year, and I didn't know that you had this all year round. So now I'm going to have to get back on your website and check it out.
Yes. And you know what's funny is I think last year when I was making those, I was making like 300 because I
Yes.
had been hired to create 300 of them for a very famous pop star's holiday gift boxes. And what's really interesting about that, because it was a really beautiful, fun, exciting job. And what's cool about that is I called in that job using a magical ritual that's in my newest book, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. So
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yay. So we'll talk about that. So I want to talk about how you got into working with the plants. Let's start
yes.
at that. I mean, I know you've had the spiritual journey, but at some point, plants came into your fold.
Yes, yes. And so for me, I was raised pretty religious. I grew up in a religious home, a modern Orthodox Jewish home, and I went to all, Jewish schools, just a very religious upbringing. There was a lot of love, there was a lot of community, but there was also a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of this is how we do things. And for me, I just never really got it. I just never really felt the sense of the divine, the sense of spirit in synagogue, in prayers, in rules. But I was very connected to the sense of the divine, the sense of spirit, just in my connection with nature. And as a young child, trees were like some of my first best friends. I would climb a tree and I would feel its energy, and I felt most like myself when I was in a tree or when I was at the edge of the ocean. To me, I always felt God, quote unquote God, creator energy when I
Yeah.
was out in nature. And then when I went to college, I very much left behind the daily aspects of religious life. I always held on to my religion as a culture, as a history, as a heritage, but I didn't look to it as a religious doctrine anymore in any way. But I started studying ecology in college in my undergrad, and studying ecology to me was like, this is the actual religion. This is
Mhm.
actually what God, love, life is all about, which is interconnectivity, which is that we're all in this together, which is finding balance, finding homeostasis, the seasons, just the way things cycle, the way life is constantly begetting more life. Like I felt that there. And so I knew from a very young age that I am here as a bridge between humanity and nature. I want people to care about this world. I want people to feel connected and inspired and loved by this gorgeous planet we're so lucky to call home. So after college, I moved to Hawaii and I worked in marine education. I worked
Oh,
studying whales and dolphins and creating curriculum about the ocean and marine life. I then moved back to San Diego and got a job at the San Diego Zoo as a wild animal specialist. And I trained wild animals from lions to snakes to owls to cheetahs, just all kinds of different animals. And then I went back to school and got my master's in marine biodiversity and conservation.
wow.
And I also got a really bad case of ecophobia or eco anxiety, which is basically kind of an existential dread about the state of the world, the state of destruction. So while I was getting my master's degree, I also had found myself getting on anti-anxiety medications and sleep medications
Mm.
because my anxiety was getting so bad that it was affecting my sleep and my diet. And it was kind of my first go around with anxiety. um, After that program, I got hired at Monterey Bay Aquarium and moved up there and worked up there in education for a few years. And
Wow.
I felt my anxiety ease a little bit when I was up there. Just being involved in an institution that is so engaged in giving back to the world in education, underlying fear and dread. And what I really felt underneath all of that was kind of the sense that humans were unlovable, that this earth hated us, that we deserved to be removed from this earth because of the way we were treating it. Like that's what I was kind of feeling underneath it all. And then we moved back down here to San Diego. Daughter, I had this beautiful experience with my first daughter, with my first
Mm.
pregnancy, where I felt compelled to kind of bring home. And for the first time, I actually could keep plants alive because before that time, before my first pregnancy, I loved plants, but I always saw them as like the background to the animals that I was so engaged with and so kind
Yes.
of passionate about. So every time I tried to bring plants inside my home, I just inevitably ended up killing them. I was not good with plants at all. I would forget to water them and then I would overwater them. And I just didn't know how to be still enough to hear the way they communicate. And it was when I was in that first pregnancy and I was kind of transitioning from maiden to mother that the stillness and I wanted more stillness. And so I started bringing plants in, kept them alive, started having more, succulent in California in our garden. And then I had my second daughter, and when she was about 6 months old, my anxiety came back really strong. And it was probably a mix of some postpartum hormonal stuff in there too. But I just found myself spiraling in dread and fear. And even though my life was so blessed, I had two healthy, beautiful daughters. We had just moved into a home that we had purchased and I loved. We were in a great community. Yet all I felt was fear. All I felt was this just overwhelming sense of fear. And I couldn't feel the blessings that were in my life. So I went back to therapy. I got back on anti-anxiety medication, and my therapist was an guide. So she saw in me how stuck I was, especially in my third eye and my sacral chakras. So she recommended this beautiful book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is all about
Yes.
breaking. Yes, you know it. Lots of people know it.
I've
Very
got it.
famous book. It's an amazing
Yes.
book. And it's all about breaking through creative blockages. And so I started doing morning pages, I started writing, and then I felt this urge to create art with succulents. So during my children's afternoon nap, I would collect bowls and things I would find around my house. I would find some cool stones and sticks from outside, clip a couple of succulents from my garden, and I would make these little terrariums and these little arrangements just with found materials. And the most magical thing happened for me when I was doing this. My brain, that anxious, spiraling thought, like monkey mind that I was kind of experiencing, when I was in the act of creating with nature and with the plants, my brain went silent, completely silent. And I was not anxious. I was completely in the present moment. I felt flow. I felt presence. I felt the earth's love again. I felt loved. I felt loved by nature as I was experiencing so much love and appreciation for nature as well. And that's how Infinite Succulent started. That's how my business started.
That's pretty amazing. But I have to go back to, how did the plants communicate with you? How was it
At
in,
first,
like,
at
with
first,
words?
no, at first it was just a magnetism to their presence. It was just like I want plants in my house. Like I actually really want that dragon tree. I want to bring it in my house. And before that, I just didn't really think that much about bringing plants inside. I was more intrigued about perhaps planting like a raised bed and growing some herbs and foods, but I wasn't like, bring nature in, bring the plants inside. And so that was the first way they really started talking to me was like, hey, you appreciate us. Now bring us closer, make it more personal, make it more personal.
I really like that. So, to you, what is magic?
Ah, such a good question. And I actually had to really sit with that when I began to write this book because the book that is just released is called Everyday Plant Magic, but that wasn't what I had originally proposed to this publishing house. I had proposed a book that was all about living with plants spiritually and how they enhance our spirituality.
Oh,
And they came back to me with like, we don't really know exactly how to sell that or what that means. So what about if we called it Everyday Plant Magic and we talked about plant magic? And so I had to sit like, okay, well, what do they mean by magic? What do I mean by magic? So when I sat with it, I discovered my definition of magic. Magic is the knowing that every single thing is actually energy and that there's a spark of divine everything. So magic to me
yes.
is the energy that is life. But the act of crafting, of working, of making magic is to intentionally move, transform, manipulate that energy. So once I had that definition, I was like, that is exactly how I use plants. I use plants to help me transform my own energy emotionally. I use plants to transform the energy of my home, of spaces. I use plants to transform the energy of my clients. And I use plants to transform my ability to open up to receive prana, the energy that is always flowing to us.
Always. So, that's what you mean by plant magic, and which
Yes.
is alchemy. And so, what I'm
Yes.
hearing is alchemy as you're talking about it. So, magic equals alchemy. Alchemy equals magic. Either way, they're interchangeable.
Yes. And
And
in that sense too, transformation and change in itself is also magic.
yes, and you make the magic with the plants. So, what do you think the reason is that people feel so disconnected with nature, with, communing with nature, or even more importantly, respecting nature?
Oh, that's such an important question. And there's a lot to that question. Honestly, I think that the reason we feel so disconnected from nature is because of our perspective and our perception. It's because we're told all the time how disconnected we are. We're spending a lot of our days indoors on screens, separate away from what feels like nature. But I think one thing that's really important for all of us to remember is that we cannot actually be separate from that which we are.
I love
We
that statement.
we are nature. We are children of Earth. We are part of this planet. How can we separate from that which we are? So energetically disconnected from nature. We're always energetically connected to nature, but it's our perception, it's our perspective, it's our awareness. That's where we're disconnecting. And that has everything to do with our society and our conditioning.
What really happens to me is now, when I see a tree, if somebody staples something or nails something into it, it makes me cringe,
Yeah.
um, because I now have, like, since I've been on this path, have a deeper empathic understanding. So it's more of like a feeling understanding, about the consciousness that plants have. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, not just fish. I mean, even people fishing. I know that if it's to feed yourself, but even to fish and throw back, whether you bless them or not, you're still causing, it's like somebody doing something to you, and causing a nick in your skin. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah. Sport fishing in that way, I kind of feel like it's a little torturous for the animal, but whatever. Like people are gonna be people. And I think
But
for those of us who feel that, who have that level of empathy and feel that, we don't do that. Like that's we just don't
right,
involve ourselves in those types of activities.
we don't, and I just have such, yeah, compassion and empathy for now, for
Yeah.
things that 30 years ago I wouldn't have thought twice about, and
Yeah.
today, being much more careful, about what I do and how I interact with my plants, with the nature around me, or when I have opportunity, and even going to the water's edge, because I'm not a
Yeah.
big ocean swimmer, but I love to go and at least get my toes dipped into the water because it makes a difference. I have to tell you one quick story when you're talking about the mammals, the water mammals. And I was in Kauai in January, and so we went on this catamaran trip. And so spinner
The
dolphins,
spinner dolphins. I
they're
love spinner
really
dolphins.
prominent there, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
sitting there going, okay, dolphins, come visit my boat. Come say hello to me. I really want to see you. Come visit, come visit, come visit. And I was also trying to talk to the whales, which they were way out, but they were
Yeah.
breaching. But
Yep.
what came to our catamaran was not spinners.
Was it a monk
They
seal?
were bottlenose,
Oh, so they're
bottlenose
bigger.
dolphins.
Mhm. They're
But
bigger.
bigger, the bottlenoses don't usually come and interact with the
And they
boat. But
came
two of
to
them, they
you.
came, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so honored. Thank you. I just was like, feeling so blessed that
I
they heard
feel like
me.
that every time I see dolphins in the wild. So dolphins are my spirit animals. Like they've been a spiritual guide for me my whole life. And that's part of probably why I felt so compelled to go work with them when I was just out of college. But every time I see dolphins, it's like my heart feels like it just expands completely out and my whole aura feels like it grows and I just get so excited.
Because it's the inner child. The dolphins to me represent the inner child, the abandoned playfulness, the acceptance, I mean, yes, they protect and they do other things to their loved ones, but there's just this innate joy that they carry.
Yeah. For me, it's also the kind of spiritual connection and intuitive magic because I understand dolphins. I know their anatomy and physiology. And one thing that's super cool about them is they have this big forehead here called the melon, and that's what they use for echolocation. It's right here at the third eye
I
space, and they use it to see through sound. And I'm like, wow, how cool is that? Right there in the third eye, that they're able to so beautifully use their third eye to actually navigate through the ocean. It's just incredible.
It is so cool. I want to sort of move into your book a little bit. Tell
Yeah.
us about your book. What it has in it. I know you said how
Yes.
did I can't rephrase it, but at the beginning of the show you were saying it's in the book the way you brought
Yeah,
your
that
magic to your business magic, I think it was.
yeah. So the book is called Everyday Plant Magic. I have one right here.
Oh, beautiful.
Everyday Plant Magic: Change Your Life Through the Magical Energy of Nature. And the trunk of the book, to use a nice tree metaphor, is 45 magical plant profiles. And for each plant, so here is example fern. For each plant, I talk about the metaphysical properties, a magical way to style it. And then for each plant, I also talk about the crystals that you can align with this plant that'll help enhance the energies. I talk about the elements that this plant is ruled by. I talk about the chakras that the plant actually helps to balance. And I also talk about the energetic pronouns because I don't like to call plants it. They're either she, he, or they. So I talk a little bit about their energetic pronouns. So that's kind of the trunk of the book. There's 45 of these magical plant profiles. And for some of the plants, I also have these beautiful magical rituals, which include things like guided meditations, energy practices to open up different chakras, and some actual spells and manifestation tools, which are so fun. The beginning of the book is all about connecting in with nature's magic. So at the start of the book, I kind of introduce you to what is plant magic? How do they work their magic on us? How do we open to plants and be more aware of them and let them in more? And then I talk about things like the sun, the moon cycles, the elements, the directions. And I even have rituals for calling in the directions and calling in the elements to have a more kind of infused energy in your day. I talk about the chakras. This is a book of plants, and in the whole introduction section, you're going to learn about the chakra system. You're going to learn about what it feels like when your chakra is balanced versus when it is out of balance, and how you can use nature to bring it back to balance. I have a whole little section on crystals and connecting with the magic of crystals. And then the very end of the book, I talk about living an everyday plant magic life. I talk about ways that you can utilize the rituals in this book for like new moons or full moons or daily or monthly practices. And then I have a section all about living with earth in mind. Of everyday plant magic is recognizing our interconnectivity and our accountability, responsibility to this planet and to the plants that provide us life. So that's the book.
Wow, that's amazing. It's beautiful cover.
Yes, it's
I
gorgeous.
It is really phenomenal. So, where do they find it?
Yes, so you can find it's out now. It's out in the world, so you can find it on Amazon. You can find it, wherever you like books. If for those people who prefer not to buy books on Amazon, which I totally understand and respect as well, you can head over to my website, infinitesucculent.com. And on the very top there should be a link that'll take you to the smart link for other ways to get the book as well. And pretty soon I will have some copies that I'll be selling from my website that are signed. So I know some people love getting signed copies of books. So I'll be having some copies on my website soon too.
I love signed copies of books.
Yeah, they're so exciting.
They are so exciting. So now let's talk about because you're more than just, I love how you say plant stylist, and you're much more than nature connector because you also do energy work. You're also an intuitive medium. How do you, and a spiritual life coach. So how do you weave all this together
Yeah.
in your work? How do you work with your clients with all of this?
Well, the way it's really all woven together is that nature is our battery. That's how I weave it all together. Nature and our connection to nature is how we fuel ourselves, how we energize ourselves, and how we remember who we really are and the magic we possess inside. So, whether I'm doing energy sessions on people, whether I'm working with a client for repeated times for spiritual life coaching or Dharma, soul purpose coaching, or I also specialize in intuitive and energy coaching as well, or whether I'm doing spirit reads. The way spirit communicates through me is always through nature connection, nature metaphors, because that's who I am. right? And one of the things we know is that spirit will communicate to us through a way we understand and then can share through other people. So when I'm working with my clients, a lot of the initial practices we do are all about grounding, learning to start pulling in earth energy. What does that mean? What does that feel like? That's kind of where we start. Then learning how to open up the crown and the solar plexus to pull in solar energy. What does that begin to feel like? And then we start working with the energy of the plants, starting to become aware of them, feeling into their aura, giving moments to start listening to their guidance, feeling into what are some of the energies I'm calling in right now? What are some plants that can help support that? And I think one of the things that's really important when we're doing work like this is that we're not giving our power away to the plants, to the moon, to the seasons, to the
Hmm.
crystals. We're utilizing these beautiful magical portals and magical tools that are all around us and so accessible. We're utilizing it to infuse ourselves and remember that we possess the most magical qualities inside of us. These are
Which we do.
these are the tools to remember. But the strongest sense of magic, the intentionality behind anything you do is coming from you, and you are the most magical part of this equation, always, always.
I love that because not to put them in, like as a separate thing is connected. And you keep saying that, which is true, but
Yeah.
saying that we are part of that connection in all aspects.
Yeah.
Because I think one could get lost in
Yes.
the magic of nature and the plants and the beings that are more of nature, because humans have sort of separated themselves from that. Not everybody, but many.
Yeah. And I think that's shifting. I mean, I think one of the reasons plants are so popular right now, and especially in 2020, why like all the plant stores were like selling out of plants, was because we feel innately this soul desire to reconnect with what we are, which is nature, to feel that connection, to feel that sacred and reciprocal relationship that we do truly have. And unfortunately, the way it's been presented in our more modern society, at least here in like the United States and most of the Western world, is that nature and this earth are just something for us to take from. It barely even feels like there's anything alive there, the way that it's described. It's just resources for us to just continue to take from, as opposed to looking at the fact that we live in an interconnected system, and anything
Hmm.
we take and anything we give back, right? Because anything we take, we're also creating something from it. Like whether we're conscious about the give and take or not, like it's still happening. That reciprocity is still happening. Unfortunately, the way it's been playing out, everything we're giving back to Earth is pretty toxic right now.
Yeah,
And
it
we have to
is.
shift that. We have to shift that because it also means that some of the stuff we're receiving is also toxic,
Yes.
because where else is it going to go?
Right.
We're,
Like the
we're in a closed
fracking.
loop system here. We're in a closed loop system.
Exactly. My concerns about fracking are huge. I don't want to
Mm.
get political, but my feeling is that when you take something out of the earth, you cannot put it a substitute back in because it doesn't hold the same. What's the right? It's like the thickness of the. So you take oil out. Oil have a what's it? I'm not going to say it.
Viscosity.
Thank
Viscosity.
you.
Hmm.
That's what I'm thinking. But if you fill it back up with water, well, it's not the same.
Right. Right.
It doesn't
You know,
have
there
the same
there
balance.
are some technologies out there that are looking to try and pump CO2 back down into the earth. I am not well versed enough in that to know whether, that's really a feasible thing. I'm pretty open to, hey, we should use our technology and our know-how to try to benefit the systems we live in as opposed to continue to just take from it. So
Yes.
I feel like there could be ways that I know, and actually in Iceland, they're doing some of this already, where they kind of use concrete through somehow with some of the concrete production. They're actually trying to capture CO2 from the air and bring it back down into the earth. So that, I mean, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it is trying to rectify the imbalance that we've created over decades and decades of
Making
extraction. Yeah.
making it more bioidentical, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
Well, I'm happy with just trying to make it more balanced. Like if we first just try and work on more balance, and I think one of the biggest ways, especially if we're looking at, carbon and climate change, is to keep the old growth forests alive, protect
Yes.
them, stop cutting down the old trees, start planting new trees, and we can get more into that in a minute. But like, this is where I get a little bit passionate. I'll say passionate because I truly believe that we have every single thing we need to meet the demands of our environmental future. I truly believe we have the intelligence, we have the technology, and I believe with a lot of the people we have the will to try to live a life that's more sustainable, that keeps nature in mind, that allows there to be of harmony and sustainability in the systems. I think we have everything we need except the political and corporate will.
Well, and the fact is, there's a lot of greed there. Greed
Right,
is not good. I
right.
mean, I understand capitalism, God bless, go with God, but let's have a conscience when we're trying to
Yes.
conquer the world, so to speak.
Yes. And
You
also
know,
recognize, like, can we really, quote unquote, conquer the world? Maybe it's not about conquering the world. Maybe it's actually about understanding we belong to this world.
well, which we do, but people with their egos and their
Yeah.
desire to have it all. And it's sort of like, I want it all and I want you to have nothing. And there are people that feel that way.
Uh, yeah. I
And
think it's pretty
so
apparent in this country right now.
it truly is. And so it's just wanting to have people understand that there's abundance everywhere and you don't have to
Yes.
deny somebody else their abundance so
Ugh.
you can have yours.
Yes, and actually that is one of the most beautiful messages from the plants, is to remember to go outside and look around and see the abundance of this world, to see that the way this world is created is so that everything we need grows up from the ground or flows to us from the mountains or the rains. Like, again, everything we need is here. It's here.
It
But
is.
we've forgotten, as we've been distracted by things like greed and power over and senses of supremacy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
think one thing you can see, like right now, we're actually, as a society, we're dealing with a lot of issues of people feeling supreme over each other. But I think even before that, we saw human supremacy over nature, right? There was
yes.
this idea of, and it might even be biblical, that like we are created to be the shepherds of this, or like everything out here on this earth is for us.
Right.
Which is kind of a biblical approach that I don't think I agree with. I see it a lot more as a even playing field for all of us. But yeah, yeah, it's a fascinating time to be.
It truly is. And why did we choose to come in at this time? Because we made the choice to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's for a number of reasons.
Yeah. And I believe that the way I start the book, I start the book with a letter to the reader that's saying, welcome back. Welcome back. Because I believe that what I'm sharing in this book is actually ancient remembrances that we all hold because we all evolved in nature. And there is a concept called biophilia, the biophilia hypothesis. Are you familiar with that, Marla?
I'm not.
Okay. So it was proposed by a Harvard biologist, Dr. E.O. Wilson. I believe it was back in the 70s, but I could be wrong. I think it was either 70s or early 80s. But he basically proposed this hypothesis, which states that humans have an innate cellular love for other forms of life. Bio is life, philia is love. And it's because we evolved in nature. And because we evolved in nature, our cells themselves are drawn to nature. love it, want it. And I actually take it a step further to go into kind of a wellness look and say, hey, if we evolved in nature, doesn't it make most sense that our cells will function the best when exposed to nature and to natural, phytochemicals, the chemicals given off by the plants, things like that? Wouldn't it make more sense that our bodies function the best in natural spaces? And if that's true, wouldn't it also make sense that when we take away to natural spaces, our cells are not functioning optimally?
And what's really interesting, it just popped into my head of this is when people back in the day, solariums, they would go to solariums to heal.
Yeah.
Well, what did they have? They had natural spring water. They had nature around them. It wasn't in the middle of the concrete jungle. You would be in the quote unquote country, sort of,
Hmm.
and that's where people go to heal. Even the natural hot water springs. It's like nature's jacuzzi.
Yeah.
I find it a bit hot myself, but it's nature's jacuzzi, in my opinion.
Some of them can be pretty stinky.
Yes. Oh my God, mud baths. You now talk about being in, and with all the sulfur that comes up, but how it treats your body with
Yeah.
such love and such healing and nurturing. And that's what I think people forget is that if you were a city person and you've never really been exposed to a lot of nature, how that could be, because that's me. I mean, I was a city girl. We
Yeah.
weren't taken camping. We weren't done. The natural things or nature things weren't brought into our sphere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a late learning education, but one with passion.
Yeah. And I think it's really important also for us to remember that we can connect with nature anywhere. We don't have to go up into the forests or out to the country or get off grid to be like, okay, now I can connect with nature. I write in the book, you can connect as easily with a tree in the middle of the city as you can with a tree in the forest or out in the country. They're there. It's always there. It's always around us. And I actually think there are some people in cities who are so connected to nature, whether it's because they are really bringing nature into their, apartment spaces, or whether it's
Hmm.
because they're really, really utilizing the public parks or community gardens that are available. I actually think there are some people in very urban settings who are both physically and spiritually and energetically more connected with nature than people maybe living in suburbia with a forest in their backyard and who just don't ever go out there or even remember that it's there or create any kind of connection at all.
That's very true. I think that's very, very true because I know as a young gal, I used to buy little seedlings and grow them. And I
Oh, it's so
remember
cute.
at some point, and I would, as they grew up, I would put them in bigger pots and this
Yep.
and that. And my mother's home, like where the big window was just all full of plants. I remember when I moved out, she would complain and say, "Oh, I keep trying to kill them, but they won't die." I'm like, "Well, I guess I did a good job."
She was joking with you. She actually loved them. She loved them being there. They made her think of you.
But I really enjoy doing that, but it's outdoor. It's so funny because I can have an indoor plant. I had a 10-foot money tree grow. I
Ooh.
mean, it was very thin, but it grew, and I remember leaving it in my house because I couldn't take it with me when I moved because I was moving
Yeah.
to a different state.
Yeah.
But on the outdoor planting, not as talented. For some reason, my green thumb really works with inside plants more so than the outdoor.
Fascinating. And I think for you, it might. Do you do a lot of energy work in your spaces?
Certain spaces, not all the
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah. And do you
I
have
do.
crystals? Do you have crystals in your home?
Do not behind me. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't even
So
move. I have
so
lots of crystals.
you've created inside of your homes, you create such a beautiful energized space. And when you bring the plants in, they feel that. They feel it.
And I love it. I don't have room for a lot of plants, but I love having the plants. So,
Yeah.
like in the summertime, our deck is just filled with colors and plants.
Can
And
I can I ask
yes,
you, what are some of the plants you feel most drawn to? Like, what are some of the ones that are in your home or that you feel like you wanna bring into your home?
so I love ficus trees. I don't have room for ficus trees, but I love ficus trees. And what's interesting is that I remember I used to have an event management company.
Ooh.
And I had done a wedding, and the florist and I were friends. So he gave me this. 4 or 5 foot ficus tree that was used for the wedding. He said,
Yes.
yeah, let me bring it to your place. Well, by the time I moved out of that apartment, I can't tell you how many home changes that plant made in terms of the pots getting bigger and
Yeah.
bigger. But
Yeah.
by the time I left, the ficus tree was hitting the 9 foot ceiling, and I put my twinkle. It was in my office, and I put my twinkle lights in it, and it was one of my favorite plants. But I couldn't take it with me.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I really do like my greenery. I just, you know, have limited space, so I don't have as many. I have a couple in the house downstairs.
Yeah.
Also, the light in the place I'm living right now, it's not like the other places I've lived in.
Right. And it's good to know this. Like whenever I talk with my clients about, bringing plants into the home, what are the right plants, what are the right energies, the first thing we always have to talk about is what are the conditions of your home, because that's going to help us decide what are the plants that are going to thrive here. Can plants thrive in this space depending on the conditions as well? I love that you just talked about ficus, because I feel like ficus in particular, and I'm thinking a little bit of like Ficus elastica, rubber tree, or
Okay.
Ficus lyrata, which is fiddle leaf fig. And both of those they're both a little stronger in the yin, the restorative energies, but they're both very balanced in both. And both of them have this energy of like, you gotta be you. And you gotta just keep going on the path that feels right for you. Ficus elastica is really like, don't even compare yourself. Just be in your own lane. Like just grow your own way and don't even look what other people are doing. And Ficus lyrata, the fiddle leaf, is like, just embrace all of who you are and don't forget to dance.
So it's about authenticity.
Yes,
They're very supportive of you living an
authenticity.
authentic life,
Yes.
which is so beautiful, which is something that's really important because many people, because of society, how they're raised, criticism, judgments, try to be something they're not or live a
Ugh,
life that they're not and they don't even resonate with. But because there's a quote unquote expectation that you need, and I'm underlining it in invisible lines, to be something that just doesn't make you feel good. Like how many
right,
people do you know who are attorneys or doctors who just hate being the attorney or doctor, but this is what they were told that they had to do and there was an expectation
right. And
attached
now
to
it's
it.
paying the bills, so how are you gonna leave that, right?
Right. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it's giving you a very comfortable living. And then it's like, how do I change that? But
Yeah.
then I love the people who have gone through these educational processes and then they go, no, you know what? This life is not for me. And had the courage,
Mhm.
because it does take courage to say, I need to find a different path because
Yeah.
it's not making my heart sing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, even for me in my business with Infinite Succulent in the last few years, I've completely pivoted. When I started Succulent, it was really plant art and plant styling. I taught workshops. I did plant into the crystals pretty early, and sell those, but I was really focused on products and workshops and doing styling. Um, and then as I continued to work with the plants, and they continued to be my main teachers for expansion, they unlocked within me my intuitive gifts, my abilities as a healer, as a medium. And I just couldn't leave it at just making art, because at all my workshops, I'd find that I'd get into these deep conversations with people about mental health, about how plants impact us on the mental health, about life and what we were just talking about, this should asking for. And so even as I was
Right.
doing these workshops, I'm like, this is coaching. Like what's really happening here is that the plants and the creative spaces is letting us connect back with our soul desires and our soul remembrances. And so in 2020, when everything kind of stopped and I was working hard on this book proposal, I started taking more courses on cultivating my own intuition, discovered that I'm not only an intuitive, but a medium as well. And when I wrote this book, not only did I research the plants in terms of their phytochemicals, their biology, their anatomy, some of the metaphysical uses of them, but for each plant, I also sat in meditation and asked the plant to share, what is your wisdom? What is your guidance for us right now? And that was such a powerful part of writing this book. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had not been rejected in this idea for this book for like the 2 years of rejection I had, because in those 2 years, I develop my gifts.
And here's the thing. Things happen when they're supposed to. So
Yeah.
these things that you were probably and you kept going. So you were resilient in your belief about the book you wanted to write,
Yeah.
but this gave you a new opportunity. I need to take a pause here for a second because it's charity shout out time. So as
Ah,
you know, because I've explained it, I've shared this with you, we like to honor the charities of our guests. And we like to do that by bringing it into the podcast so you can talk to us about what your charity is, where the passion is. Well, I'll know what the passion is on this one, but and talk about why you got involved in this particular charity and what you'd like from the listening audience to possibly do for it to support it. And your charity is One Tree Planted.
yes.
So let's
One
talk.
One Tree Planted is a wonderful organization that is committed to reforesting the world, and they are planting trees all over the world. And the way it works with them is $1 given is one tree planted, always. So I've always been really big on giving back. When I started my business, I always had a policy where $1 from everything I sold would go toward some kind of nonprofit or some kind of charity. The first few years, I really shifted that charity every month based on my interest or the need. That got a little confusing for me. And so starting last year, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just stick with one charity for the full year. And I found One Tree Planted because I was really big on like, I want to plant trees. I want to give back in that way. I want to feel like it's something really physical. Obviously, I'm all about plants and plant love and plant connection, and reforesting the world is going to be such a big part of the solution moving forward into a more sustainable future. So I donate $1 for every sale made to One Tree Planted. I was actually super excited because I was able to. Last month, I got a really good job where someone ordered 500 crystals from me, and I was able
Wow.
to give a $500 donation and have 500 trees planted in like 1 month. And that was so exciting. So it's a really easy charity to get involved with. You just go to One Tree Planted and you can state exactly where you want your money to go. They do have different reforesting programs all over the world, or you can just have it be a generic gift and let them decide where is it most needed. You have that choice. I think they're even for the holiday season, I think they have an ugly Christmas sweater that's all trees, where if you purchase that, a certain number of trees will be planted as well. So it's a very easy organization to get involved with. Just head to One Tree Planted, and they are doing a beautiful job. And they also partner with local and indigenous populations in some of the areas that they're doing the planting in, so that
Nice.
they're helping to maintain that level of guidance, that level of respect and learning, truly.
And it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the show, which was about trees and them being cut down and needing to reforest so that we can keep the environment, the earth environment, really get it strong again.
Yeah. And I think, when I talk about in the beginning of the book, when I talk about what is plant magic, I describe it as the way we kind of learn about plant science in kindergarten, which is the remembrance that plants are the actual basis of all life on Earth. Not only are they the air that we breathe, they are the start of all the food we eat, whether we eat a totally plant based diet or not. It all starts with the plants. They're the
Yes.
foundation of the food web. So, not only are they the air we need to survive, they are the food we need for sustenance. And for a very long period of time, they were the materials we needed for protection as well. Not to mention the medicine we can get from them, not to mention what I call the passive plant medicine, which is the amazing energetic and physiological benefits we have from just being in their presence. And, forest bathing is such a good example of that. Are you familiar with forest bathing, Marla?
I'm not.
Okay. Forest bathing is amazing. So, in Japan and in Korea, they're doing a lot of scientific research into this concept of forest bathing. In Japan, it's called Shinrin Yoku. Um, and basically, what they're finding is that if you allow people to just go spend time in forested areas, it has a really beneficial impact on the nervous and the immune system. So, in places like Japan and Korea, they're doing scientific studies where they're testing saliva and blood of people before before they head into the forest, and then they give them a certain amount of time in the forest, and then they test again. And they're seeing, decreases in seeing decreases in blood pressure. So like some of these like stress symptoms are definitely coming down. And what's super fascinating is that they've been able to measure that when you spend up to a day to 3 days in a forested area, your body produces more of this special white blood cell called killer cells. And these white blood cells fight against cancer. And not only do you produce more of these special white blood cells, but these white blood cells have more power within them to like eat up cancer cells.
So it
So,
really, really builds them to
yes.
like a super strength.
Right, and what's so fascinating about that is that you don't have that increase just while you're in the forest. If you spend up to a day in the forest, a full day, you can have an increase of that for like up to like 5 days afterwards. So, yeah.
So my question is, are they doing something where, for example, they put people in individual campsites where they can have their forests?
I am not sure about that in terms of the forest bathing research. It's possible because I know with some of the research they've done, they've actually kept people there for a few days, so they have like dormitories that are in there. So there probably is something like that. I do remember I listened to a fascinating audiobook a few years ago that was all about like the brain on nature, and they were actually working with a bunch of both veterans and victims of who had PTSD, and they were taking them out into nature, and they were actually utilizing those like brain wave measurement
Mhm.
things. You know, the thing
Yes,
that like they look like a swim cap with all the nobules on them,
I
and
know them well.
yeah.
Yes.
So they would actually do a lot of measurements of the people's brain waves when they first got to the campsite, after a day, after 3 days, to kind of see, because one of the things that scientifically what happens is that different parts of the brain start to light up and become greater when we have exposure to nature, while other areas of the brain, pretty much the prefrontal cortex is one of those areas, actually gets a little bit more diminished. So the part of our brain that tends to be very fixated on ourselves and our current condition within the prefrontal cortex, when we have prolonged exposure to nature, that starts quieting down, while the parts of our brain that are more like the higher thinking areas, those start lighting up. So just giving ourselves opportunities to be in nature itself, but also they've done this research with, inmates and even people in hospitals, where even just a view of nature out the window or a screenshot of a forest, even that has an impact on the brain and on the nervous system and on the immune system too.
Which I can assume that it would. So I want to read something to you and the audience because Marvita Dragonfly has been participating on the show, and she had shared, I have a jazz hands in my front yard. No wind, and one day I said, I love you, and it danced with me for a long time, lifting its branches up and down. Marvita cried with joy. And so I wanted
That
to
is
share that because it's so
so
beautiful.
That is so beautiful. And I want to let people know that whether or not you have the awareness of plants and their magic, they're already working their magic on you. They really are. When you have that tree that you just love to look at out your window, or the one that you always look at on your commute, that you have a relationship with that plant. And every time you look at it, that tree is communicating and connecting with your aura and shifting your energy. That is plant magic. That is plant magic.
So thank you, Magic. Yes, absolutely. She's saying her tree is beautiful.
I'm sure. I'm
And
sure.
I know when I sit outside, I do my prayers in the morning. If it's cold, I take a blanket and wrap myself up because I look at not my trees, but the
Yeah.
trees in the neighborhood as I do that. And I just
Yeah.
love to, I tend to look up because I like to look up at the top of the trees. And it just is, I can very much say yes to what you're
Yeah.
saying and agree with it. So we
Yeah.
only have like a minute left,
Oh,
2 minutes. Tell me, is there something that I haven't shared that you'd like to share with the audience? And number two is, I'd love to know what your favorite tree or plant is, if
Oh
we have time
gosh.
for this.
That's gonna
I
be so
know,
hard. Okay. In terms of anything that I wanna share that has not been shared yet, I feel like we covered a lot. I guess what I really wanna share is one of the main tenets of plant magic, which is just to remember to open to receive. That
love it.
everything we want, the I mean, truly everything we want. And not only that, but just energy in general, the magic of the universe. It's all around us. It's always flowing to us. And the plants are such beautiful and accessible reminders to root down into earth, pull up her energy, to open up to the heavens, feel the sun on your skin, really pull it in and open to
Yes.
receive the love, the adoration, the guidance, the energy that is always, always flowing to us. Okay, in terms of favorite plants, I never can answer that question because I feel like it's like someone asking me who's my favorite child, and I'm like, I can't. I love them all. For houseplant, for trees, I think probably fiddle leaf fig is one of my absolute favorites, Ficus lyrata. She reminds me about embodiment. She reminds me to dance, she reminds me to play, and she reminds me to be in my body. And I'm a thinker, so that really helps. Outdoors, I feel like I have a really strong connection with oak, to be honest. It's a tree that I hear very clearly when I connect with them. And they're just so mystical and so just
Powerful.
always, yeah, just powerful, powerful trees. So I think oak is one I really connect with, and then willow. Oh gosh, I
Oh,
love willow so much.
it's so
Um,
beautiful and how it dances,
and
comes down
and
and dances.
and it's a reminder of the beauty of our sorrow, the beauty that can actually come from releasing our pain. I mean, that's
Yes.
one of her main messages, to dance with your shadow, to let your tears flow. That's so much of her right there.
That is such a perfect way to end the show. Thank you so much, Raquel. Raquel Cohen, thank you for taking the time. I know there's so much more to talk about, and we're going to have you back on the show next year
I would love that.
because, oh my God, 2023 is just around the corner. I'm so excited. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. So appreciative. I need to thank Bridget because you are my right hand, my left hand. So grateful for all you do for me. I want to thank Marvita for all of that she's bringing in today to the show. She's hugging us both. Thank you, loving, sharing ones. Thank you, Marvita, for taking the time out of your day to be a part of the show. I want to thank you, the listening audience, also for being a part of the show. So grateful for you because you have choices on where you want to spend your time, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you want to spend it here with me and with my guests because this show, as I always say, was created for you. And so thank you for taking me up on that creation. I want to let you know that next week, Bernadette Polina will be the guest. So I hope you'll tune in. I I can't. I'm leaving for a week, so it's going to be a pre-recorded show, and then it's Thanksgiving and a time of such gratitude because knowing how powerful being grateful for whatever it is you have in your life, because you may not feel you have enough, but when you start becoming grateful for what you have, more will show up for you. So please trust in that. Um, okay. Well, I'm going to leave you now. And as I do, as always, I send you. Oh, wait, I have one more message. Check out my website, marlagoldberg with 2rs.com. I always forget about me because I'm so focused on you, the listening audience. So please check out how I can work with you, what I have, past interviews, inspirations, my, book recommendations, etc. So please check me out. If you like the show, like it, subscribe to it, review. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show or a topic that I haven't covered so I can bring it to you. And now I'm leaving you with love, blessings, and gratitude, letting you know how grateful that you're in my life in whatever capacity you're in it. For not only are you my student, you are my teacher. Not only am I your teacher, I am your student. And before I leave, I'm going to say these 3 little words to you. They're not little, they're big. I love you. You are loved. not just by me, not by family and friends, even though they love you, but by the many, many beings on the other side of the veil who are here, hoping that you will ask for what it is you need, want, and desire so they can start conspiring on your behalf. So ask for what you need, guidance, direction, even if it's a specific material thing. Ask so they can conspire on your behalf. And remember that not to take it literally, they come in very unusual ways, your responses, your answers. So just be open to how it might come to you. Okay, take care, and I'll be with you next week in spirit. I love you, and stay well.